wondering how I got into this mix.
Welcome warmly to the village stage today, a dear brother, Derrick Broze.
What's up, Envision? How many of you have been up all night? Anybody here know? Are you the ones? Okay, we got a few. You guys are the heroes here, the real MVPs. What's up, everybody? My name is Derrick Broze. Did anybody hear me speak on Friday in the same area? Awesome. Site, The Conscious Resistance, my YouTube channel, and my book series focus on bringing together both the pursuit of spirituality and inner healing and the inner transformation, as well as exposing the corruption in our world, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But as I said the other day, one of the things that I first experienced is that there were folks in the spiritual community who were kind of poo-pooing me, talking about various topics in the past when I was first starting to wake up, as they say. You know, I'd bring up various ecological or environmental disasters, or maybe police violence, or a war, or something like that. And it was very much like, let's cover our ears and close our eyes and pretend it's not happening. That is not a worldview that I agree with, and that is why, to me, the conscious resistance is the recognition, the realization that the struggle for a more free and ethical and just world comes from the understanding that this struggle is both one of internal struggle, internal battle against what I call our internal tyrant, our doubts, fears, and insecurities, and our trauma, as well as recognizing that there are physical manifestations of this power. There are institutions and people and individuals who are responsible for a lot of the problems that we see in the world, and that we have to reckon with that. And so my work takes on some of the inner work that we talked about the other day. Promoting meditation and promoting healing trauma. We talked about uncovering trauma and becoming the warrior we're meant to be. But also, in my day-to-day life, I am a freelance investigative journalist. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've written 5 books, and that's, for me, the other side of the healing, that I try to expose people to what's going on in the world through my work, and then when they start questioning those systems, I say, hey, here's some of the solutions. Let's start moving to that, right? So today we are going to go through some of those negative things a little bit. I'm with you for the next hour, maybe a little bit more. Probably about 2/3 or a half of it is going to go through some of those, what I'm calling the matrix today. And I don't want you to be afraid of that. I want you to welcome the information and the knowledge, and some of it will be familiar to you. Hopefully some of it will be new. And then, of course, as with anything I do, we're going to get to the solutions, right? Who's here for solutions? Who came here to this festival to learn something, learn how to empower themselves, empower their communities? And, you know, one important point we got to make, and I said this last year, for those who might have heard me in previous years, that Envision, I think, is one of the best festivals, kind of get-togethers that I've seen and anywhere in the world, because of how holistic it is. Because I've been invited to speak at some places that call themselves conscious or transformational, and the yoga, the meditation, the workshops are really just kind of an afterthought that are tacked on at the end so they can call themselves transformational. But everybody's really there just to party, and that's fine too. But I feel like Envision does it in a really beautiful way, where there is this blend of that. Obviously, there are people here who love to party, myself included on some nights. And others are here with pad and pen in hand, ready to learn, and came here for that purpose, to go home inspired. And so that's a beautiful thing. However, the work does not stop tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when you're watching Emancipator close out the festival. The real work starts when you go home. Because, right, I mean, I've met people from India, from of course, Costa Rica, all through Central and South America, across the U.S., from different parts of Europe, Australia. We're all coming from different places, different points in our journey. And the only way that we're going to see real change is if we take the lessons that we've heard from various workshops and experiences and beautiful people we've met, and we integrate them into our day-to-day lives. If we just leave that knowledge and that information, those experiences here in the jungle, and we go back to whatever your regular life is, then nothing's going to change. And we'll be back here next year, and I hope to come back. And I'll probably be giving a very similar talk, saying like, hey, has anybody done anything in the last year? What goals, have you advanced on? Because I think that's where we should focus on. And as I discuss, again, these sort of the problems, this institution that I'm calling the Matrix today, and we look at the solutions, I want you to think about integrating those solutions into your life, because some of them are very small, very individual, and very easy. But that's how it starts. And if you've heard anybody say this throughout this week, it seems consistent, from Rob Greenfield to many other people doing beautiful things, that the changes can start small, but then they build, right? So if you're in a point in your life where you're completely in the Matrix, as it were, don't be discouraged and feel like you can never get to a place where you feel more free and living in line with your values. Because again, my work is all about how do we align thoughts, words, and actions. Not just talk about it on social media, not just talk about it on stage, not just write about it, but actually live it, right? So as I did in the last talk, I like to define words. The first thing I want to let you guys know is where my work is coming from. I was supposed to have some slides, and it would have been helpful if there was an image right there I would be showing you right now. Just imagine it's there. But I consider myself to be what I call a holistic activist. Just like this festival is really thinking holistic. That term is often overused and misunderstood, but it has a meaning. It comes from the philosophy of holism, which is about building, understanding and studying whole systems rather than just studying the individual pieces. And when you do that with any field of study, it completely changes the way that you understand a subject. For example, holistic ecology is the study of the planet, the entire planet, the animals, the humans, the bodies of water, as one system, as opposed to breaking them down and looking at them individually. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, it just changes the way you understand something. There's also, of course, people understand holistic medicine rather than just treating the symptom. You're trying to look at the whole body and get to the root of it, right? So when I talk about holistic activism, it again goes back to what we talked about yesterday, trying to work on our own trauma, as well as to look at the various systems in the world. And let's say that you're somebody who's very much concerned about this destruction of the environment and extractive energy industries and things of that sort. If that was my main concern, I would start by doing this self-assessment of my life and saying, okay, in what ways do I use those products? In what ways am I supporting that industry? Rather than just pointing my fingers outwardly and saying, they're the problem. They're the ones that are doing this, which is true on one level. Also turn your fingers back to yourself and say, how am I contributing to this? How am I feeding this system, right? And so that's what we're really going to focus on today, thinking holistically. So the talk is called How to Localize, Decentralize, and Opt Out of the Matrix. Localize. Just throw out some words. What does it mean to be local? What comes to mind there? I mean, it's a pretty simple one, I think, right? This concept's growing. Just shout it out. Neighborhood. Anybody else? I think that pretty much says it, right? Get as local as you can. Localize, right? Get down to your neighborhood, your community, your city, whatever that may be. I also think it relates to our personal journey, right? The most local you can be is in your own heart, your own mind, right? So localize. Decentralize. What does that mean? What do you think of when you hear that term? Decentralize, decentralization. No banks? Right on. I didn't get it. Off the grid, right, okay, decentralized. So we're talking about moving away from centralized systems, and some centralized systems could be, say, government, banks, various different, even down in the activist level, there are groups that are very centralized, and we could spend all day talking about the benefits of decentralization versus centralization, but I definitely favor a more decentralized, individualized, community-based approach. So we're thinking local, we're thinking decentralization. And what does it mean to opt out? What does that mean to opt out of something? If you're obviously opt out of something you don't like, you want to avoid. That is the key, that underpins the philosophy of what we're going to talk about today. That I'm going to get briefly into. We're going to try to keep it somewhat surface level because we can go really deep, and we just don't have the time for it today. But the key, I believe, is to start aligning our words with our values and principles, and the ones again that do not align with the principles. First, you identify who am I, what is my journey, where am I coming from, how did I get here, start healing your trauma and thinking about what are the principles that guide me. The other day we talked about the 7-generation principle, we talked about the golden rule, the non-aggression principle, the non-initiation of force and violence. And for me, those guide all of my decisions, from diet to friends to relationships to job to how I make my money to how I communicate with other people. And so the goal is to start opting out of the systems that don't align with those values. And that could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be, in that relationship, of course, could be a familiar relationship, a romantic relationship, your relationship with the government, your relationship with this store that you choose whether or not to patronize. So it's about aligning your actions with your stated goals. That's what opting out is. Now, the Matrix. What do you think of when you hear the Matrix? Most obviously, the movie, Keanu Reeves, anybody? So, the Matrix, right? In the movie The Matrix was sort of a digital control grid where they had deceived the world to believe we were living in a world that wasn't real, right? While we were being literally mined as batteries for these machines, right? So let's take it out of the context of the movie a little bit and just think about that idea. Have you ever felt like you've woken up from the Matrix? Have you ever had that experience? You start going down various rabbit holes, educating yourself about the health system, the food production system, the way government works, the way corporations work, or just life in general. And I've heard it very much just throughout this weekend, people expressing feeling alone, feeling like, yeah, when I'm at home, when I'm in my regular life, I can't talk to people. We come to a crazy place in the jungle, and at the very least, we might not all agree on everything, but we feel like, hey, if I start talking about something a little bit out of the mainstream, nobody's gonna shun me or, you know, kick me to the curb, because we're already we're on the fringes already, right? So the Matrix, to me, first let's give the dictionary definition, because I like to share what the mainstream world describes it as: something that constitutes the place or point from which something else originates. As in, the Greco-Roman world was the matrix for Western civilization. Synonyms are model, a source, or a grid, right? And I think that makes a lot of sense. The synonym for a matrix is a grid, like a control grid. And so for me, I define this matrix of control in a number of systems that we're going to go through now. And as I said, we're going to go through some of the heavier stuff. These are all things that over the last 10 years, as a journalist, as a documentary filmmaker, as somebody who just does investigations and writes articles on a weekly basis and spend a lot of time trying to understand the world and trying to understand the solutions to it. Much of this is coming from that research. And I gave a presentation a couple of years ago called The Pyramid of Power, and it's kind of coming from that. So we're going to go through these. And again, these are some of the darker realities of our world, but I don't think that we're going to grow and manifest a better world just through meditation, just through well-wishing. The things that changed my life, as I said the other day, going to prison, discovering meditation, discovering positive affirmations, creative visualizations, and being able to manifest through that. But what the Creator has always shown me is that whenever I see a vision of what's possible, it doesn't mean I just sit on my ass and do nothing. I have to do everything in my power to make that, to work towards it, not just sit there and wait for things to happen. And as I said the other day, our ignorance is only going to make life more difficult for people in the future, for our children and grandchildren and on and on. Our choosing to be ignorant or choosing to remain apathetic only harms our lives in the future and the people who are coming after us. So I think it's up to us. It's imperative on everybody here who can hear this and who chooses to step out of the mainstream and come to Envision and have a beautiful experience to do something different. Who's about that life? Anybody out there about that life? I know I am. So let's talk about then, what are the various systems of this matrix so we can get to the solutions. For one, we'll start with, as my brother up here said, the banking system, the money system. This is a way that many of us are controlled and manipulated. And again, all these topics we could talk all night about because there's a lot to them, right? But we're just going to go through a little bit of it. Through the banking system and the money system, we see manipulation, we see the controlling of value, the defining of what is valuable and what isn't valuable, and essentially a form of economic enslavement. And this happens the world over. It doesn't matter what country you come from. I'm coming from the US. It essentially comes down to the central banking system, and this central banking system is used the world over. In the United States, they call it the Federal Reserve System. They call it the Wall Street bankers. They're all interconnected, and they fund the pipelines that we fight against. They fund the wars that we try to protest. They fund much of the world that is destructive I would say is not in line with our values, is funded through these banking institutions, right? And so, you know, the obvious answer, you're thinking local and thinking decentralization, opt out of that system, right? We're going to get into how do you do that? What are some of the alternatives? Moving on to the food system. The food system, I don't have to tell you guys that it's an unsustainable system where food is trucked or shipped or flown thousands of miles around the country and around the world to be right there on our plates so that we have the convenience of any time we go to a grocery store, whatever we want, whenever we want, whether it's in season or not, is there because that's what we want. We don't want to wait for things to be in season. I need it now. These systems are violent, they're wasteful. They're destructive to the planet, they're destructive to the animals, they're destructive to our bodies. And those systems integrate with big agriculture, with the biotech companies, the pesticide companies, the companies that feed the mass industrial farming systems that, again, are wreaking havoc on the environment, I would say on our health, on the animals. They're filling the soil and the water and the air with pesticides, with chemicals. How many of you have heard Stephen Brooks tell his story about him starting his Punta Mona community, which has been here 25 years? And Stephen, one of the first things that inspired him is witnessing school-aged children being sprayed with pesticides after visiting Costa Rica 25 years ago. You know, these are realities that are happening. And in the US, I mean, I don't know if you guys have kept up with it, but Monsanto, who is now owned by Bayer, is facing hundreds of lawsuits from around the world from people who've been getting cancer from glyphosate, which is the world's largest, most used pesticide, especially in the United States, being sprayed on lawns and schools all over the place. And I guarantee you, if we were all to go out and get blood and piss tests, we will find traces of glyphosate in this, because it is that prevalent. It is everywhere, and it's been everywhere for decades now. And that system is allowed to perpetuate because of the corruption that exists. And in each of these areas as we go through, there's one consistent thing that we can see, and that is this revolving door relationship between corporations and government. Somebody goes and works for Monsanto, maybe they're a lawyer, then they get hired to be in the FDA, then they go back to Monsanto. I mean, we can go on and on with each industry and see these people going back and forth between industry and government, and it's become very blatant these days. I mean, there's no conspiracy about it. It's pretty open for anybody who wants to bother to look. So that's the food production system. That's the big ag, pesticides, all that entails. And then that also leads into a lot of those same companies, let's say, for example, Monsanto, Bayer, Syngenta, the chemical companies. So think about this. The chemical companies who are making the pesticides also are now patenting the seeds to sell to the farmers so they can create monoculture, through corn, and they tell us we got to put the corn in our gas tanks, and it's just completely subsidized between corporations and the state. A lot of those same companies are also energy companies, producing unsustainable energy systems, keeping people on oil, and also, I would say, suppressing other alternative fuels that are available for those who want to look. And some people term this the oligarchy. You've heard the term oligarchy. Well, this is the oligarchy, made up of all the oil companies going back to Standard Oil from back in the day, John D. Rockefeller. A lot of these same companies are around, and they're still controlling things and manipulating markets and keeping us on that drip, on that oil drip. So I think, again, in that area, we have a choice. We can choose. I'm going to try to avoid this as much as possible, but also at the same time, they rigged the game from top to bottom. So it's not that there's nothing we can do, but in some ways, we are very limited. There's no way, even somebody like Rob Greenfield, who does a lot of beautiful experiments, has to go to an extreme, like forage his own food for a year, or, wear all his own trash to show us examples, because it's become so hard to live in line with nature. And I think whether you call it, whatever you want to call it, I call it a parasite energy. Their goal is to corrupt everything that is beautiful and to make it perverted, to turn it to the opposite, right? And that's what I see going on. So we have those systems: the banking system, the money system, the food system, big agriculture, the chemical companies, and the unsustainable energy system. There are alternatives to each of those four industries that we're going to discuss. But why is it that we don't hear about these alternatives in the mainstream world? Well, let's move to the next part of this matrix. Because of the state-run education systems, which keep people indoctrinated in many ways. Are there any survivors of the public education system? Now, this isn't to down on teachers or anybody who goes in those systems because they care, because they give a shit. Shout out to teachers and people who really do care. But the point is, and again, the topic we could go all day on. If you want to look into the Prussian model of education, the Prussian education system, which is what the U.S. education system was built and based on in the mid-1800s. It was funded by the General Education Board, by the Rockefeller Foundation, and other institutions. And they studied the Prussian model of education. Prussia was a post-World War II nation, pre-World War II nation, and they had an education system that was built around creating obedient worker bees. Everything that we use in the United States and most of the Western world is modeled off that. It's not modeled off let's find how people think individually. You see a child and they're obviously, the next Picasso, but instead of developing that, you shove them into a school system that says for the next 12 years, we're going to teach you the same as we teach everybody else. And think about the power and the influence in the system. 5 days a week, 7 to 8 hours a day, for 12 years of your life, when you're at the most impressionable in your life. I mean, it's an immense amount of power to give somebody, and we can't all homeschool, we can't all unschool. There's no perfect answers in the situation again, but I do think we have to recognize that many of the reasons that some of us get to a certain point, we're like, wow, I'm unlearning all these things I was taught, or things that they forgot to tell me about in school. And that system is to blame in many ways. And if anybody wants to learn more about that, I recommend checking out John Taylor Gatto. He was an award-winning New York City school teacher who wrote several books, and you can find some epic talks from him. John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. And also Charlotte Iserbyt, Iserbyt, I believe. You'll find them. Her book is called The Dumbing Down of America. Yeah. You can find out more about that. So then we move on to another facet of this matrix of control that keeps people ignorant and unaware. And this should be fairly obvious. The corporate media systems that either are there to distract, to divide. I tend to feel like, especially as a journalist who keeps up with the news and even things I could not care less about just because I want to know what is it that my friends who are plugged into the mainstream, what is it that they're being told? What is it that's being fed? Because this is, as I said the other day, this is the most important real estate right here. Everybody's vying for that space. So I'll tune over to CNN or Fox or MSNBC and see what perspectives are they pushing, what agendas are being pushed on my friends who are, I had some friends who are 24/7. Everything they know is coming through that box. And there are other people who everything they know is coming through Facebook and through Google. And they believe that they're getting an accurate representation of the world. And you're not. We're going to talk more about that. But these corporate systems, corporate media systems, they exist to control narratives. Now, we live, and truly do live, I would say, at a time, for those who are paying attention, where we realize that there is an information war, a propaganda war going on between the free minds and the free hearts of the world and the leaders of totalitarian governments and corporations that want to keep us blinded and distracted and dumbed down and consuming and not thinking and not questioning. They benefit off of that. So it's a battle of narratives. Are you going to listen to this narrative that tells you to hate this person or to like this person or worship this person? Don't pay attention to their past, or are you going to look elsewhere? And as we'll discuss more when we get to the smart grid, it's becoming harder and harder to question these narratives, because once you control this beautiful tool that we've all used to enrich our lives, the internet, the world is going to become and is becoming a lot less free. Information is not as free as it has been in the past. Did anybody here grow up prior to the internet? Does anybody remember the days before the internet? I remember an answering machine. You called somebody. Okay, Edward Snowden started leaking documents related to the NSA, New Zealand, and what they call the Five Eyes nations spying on all of their people. And every digital communication is in the USA, NSA, and the GCHQ, where they literally are paying government agents to create fake Twitter accounts, fake YouTube accounts, fake Facebook accounts, to go troll and in their own directions to encourage conformity. So you have people being paid through your tax dollars whose job is to go online, and when they find that person who's like, hey guys, I'm not sure I believe this whatever story of the week we're being told. I think there might be some holes in this. Maybe we should ask some questions. Maybe there's somebody being paid to come troll you and tell you you're an idiot. Discourage you from thinking, discourage you from questioning. It is a fact. And I just keep that in the back of my mind every time I start feeling myself get sucked into some discussion. I'm like, is this really going to go anywhere, or are we both about to just waste our time? And some people apparently thrive off making you waste your time. So just keep that in mind. There are literal government programs, at least we know for sure, with the British GCHQ, with New Zealand Spy Agency, and with the US, where they have programs as recent as 2013, and I'm sure they've expanded in the last 7-8 years, to encourage conformity on the internet, to create fake accounts to encourage conformity. Then we move on to another big one, and then we're almost to the solutions. And this other aspect of this control matrix that keeps people from questioning, we said the public education system, the corporate media, popular culture, and societal pressure. And the next part, which is becoming increasingly important because of the pervasiveness of their tools, what is known as big tech, or sometimes big wireless. This is the Amazons of the world, the Googles, the Facebook, the companies that we all use every single day that know everything about us. Since I joined Facebook in 2009. How long? Anybody been on for more than a decade at this point? Or about a day, or Instagram, or any of those? Yeah, we've given so much information, and sometimes it might be harmless, and we're tempted to say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then what do you have to worry about? And I think that's a very ignorant view, that's ignorant of history and how these kinds of things work. And we're at a point now where governments and corporate individuals and billionaires who might not have, again, the same goals as we do, have knowledge about human beings that no other regime has had in history. They have tools at their fingertips that nobody has had before. And now the thing is, technology, of course, is a tool. It can be used for good or bad. We just talked about the internet, right? We can use it to live stream a protest and show people the truth of what's happening on the streets, or to broadcast a permaculture workshop and enrich people's lives. Or it can be used to track, to monitor, to control, to distract, to divide. And that is the world we're in. So we have this big tech, and part of big tech is social media censorship. Are you guys aware that there is social media censorship going on? Is this new to anybody? The fact that if you're a YouTube content creator, you talk about certain things that they don't want you to talk about. Your videos can either be straight up removed, you'll be lost in the algorithm, you'll be lost in the search. And if you're relying on Google, which owns YouTube, my friends, when you search, you're not finding everything out there in the world. And I encourage you to check out DuckDuckGo.com, as well as other alternative search engines that don't track you, that don't monitor your behavior, and are showing you a more accurate representation of what's on the internet. I'm just making it clear, you're in a bubble if you're relying on that. And thinking about the ways that technology affects our lives, because this is where we're going to go with most of the rest of this, talking about the smart grid, which I think is sort of the future of all this. Again, does anybody remember driving around without being dependent on Google Maps? Does anybody remember getting lost and having to figure out where you were at because you didn't have a GPS thing to pull up? Or maybe you got those first, the ones you could put on your dash or whatever. But there was a time now where we were, not like this was so long ago, this is 10 years ago, 15 years ago at most. I mean, it's happening so quick. We're getting integrated with this technology that, again, is getting to know us in a very, I'd say, dangerous way. And these companies, big tech companies, they're using algorithms to control and manipulate our lives. They're using search engine manipulation. They're using social media censorship. And they're several of the outlets I write for over the past few years have been falsely labeled fake news by Facebook fact checkers, and there's no way to appeal this process. There's no way to truly contest it in any sort of impartial way. And if you get that sort of scarlet letter on you, well, then your reach drops. We have a page of 9 million followers. Anybody heard of the page The Mind Unleashed on Facebook or Instagram? Check us out. Well, we get maybe 5% of our audience because of this, because stories where we literally just quote a scientist or quote a researcher. There's no speculation. We take our work very seriously despite the name The Mind Unleashed. Some people are like, oh, that's a joke page, it's not real. But we take our work seriously. But when we get struck by this Facebook fact checker, next thing you know, there's a little bubble that says, this is false news. Are you sure you want to share this? And it's warning people, kind of getting that in people's head. You don't want your friends to say you're sharing fake news, right? And so it becomes this very subtle way of manipulating, controlling reality. This is what we know is called social engineering, right? You don't have to put a gun to somebody's head. You just use all these subtle ways to kind of coerce and pressure them to do the things you want or to have the opinions that you want. And those who question those opinions and who maybe speak out about things outside the mainstream, you just try to isolate them. And again, encourage them to conform, make them feel alone. And that feeling alone is a very, very powerful thing. It can either inspire you or break you down. So this moves on to the 5G smart grid. Now we're going to start getting to the solutions. Now, big wireless, big tech, these companies are coming together. Has anybody heard of 5G? Outside of, like, I'm sure you've heard Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever company is in your country promoting it. It's a global thing. They're calling it the global race to 5G. I just released a brand new documentary. It's completely for free. I would encourage all of you guys to check it out when you go home from this event. It's an hour-and-a-half long. It's called The 5G Trojan Horse, and it gives you everything you need to know from health concerns, privacy concerns, loss of local power, political corruption, the big wireless, big tech kind of monster, and then, of course, the solutions for this. But what I need you to know at this moment is we are being told that this push towards 5G, which is the 5th generation of cell phone technology, that it's going to make our phones download movies 100 times faster. It's going to bring on what they're calling the Internet of Things, which is the interconnected world where you've got the smart fridge, the smart home, the smart house, the doorbell camera, of course the phones, and everything else is interconnected in the Internet of Things. But there are many different problems with that, including that all these different interconnected devices, smart lights, smart streets, that we're being told are going to help for the environment or help for various reasons, are going to spell the end of all privacy as we know it. Each of these devices is essentially a recording device. It's essentially a microphone. If you're already putting the Google Alexa in your home and the Amazon Echo, I really encourage you to question those things and to look into the mainstream news about people's conversations being recorded and sent to these companies. You're inviting them into your home. And this welcoming of what some people call the smart grid, it's also known as technocracy, which is basically a rule by the technological elite, the most scientific among us. At least that's what they consider, right? We're moving into that world where, think about who are the richest people in the world. Zuckerberg, Facebook, Bezos, Amazon, who now owns Washington Post, who owns Whole Foods. Think about these tech giants are the ruling class in a lot of ways. They might not all be nefarious. Maybe Elon's got some good ideas, I don't know yet. But the point is they're using the technology and they have, not just to sell us things, some of it is as innocuous as that, they just want to sell you things based on your search history, but it's also knowing everything about us. And this technocracy, this smart grid, comes in very subtle ways that you might not always recognize. For example, Google as a verb, right? When you want somebody to search something, you don't say, hey, just go search it. What do you say? Google it. Those people have become so ingrained in our lives, it's become a word that we use. So I'm trying, and just think about this next time. DuckDuckGo it. It doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easy, but it's a better company that actually protects your privacy, and it's a search engine that works. And there are others out there. There's one, I can't remember the name, that every time you search, they plant trees. I mean, there are alternatives. You're not going to find it in the mainstream. You have to look for it. So go to duckduckgo.com, start there and see what you can find. But so Google as a verb, that's a subtle form that the technocracy is becoming a part of our life. Also through entertainment, through convenience, through social media, right? In the United States and in much of the Western world, specifically in the United States, by the end of this year, going to 2021, all flyers, domestic and international, will have to submit to facial recognition technology. That's going to become a norm in the United States. And has anybody heard of the social credit system in China? It's known as Sesame Credit. Or seen that show Black Mirror? I've never seen it, but every time I bring this up, people are like, oh, Black Mirror. That's a reality. It's not just a fiction TV show. Last year in China, over 1 million people were denied the right to fly out of their own home country because their social credit score was too low, because they had antisocial behavior. What is antisocial behavior? Maybe you jaywalked. You posted fake news on social media. You didn't pay your bills on time. You didn't put your recycling in the right bins. Good things that help raise your score: you donate to certain charities. You donate blood. You make sure that you're always on time to your doctor's appointments. I mean, this is a reality, and you better believe these companies are going to develop in the United States. Google helped develop China's censored internet that they have under a project known as Project Dragonfly, if anybody wants to look into that. So these same companies that are helping the West are also building some of the most totalitarian technocratic systems that we're seeing already today in China, in Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea. The smart grid is moving fast, and 5G is basically the backbone that's going to allow the Internet of Things and this what I call the technocratic state to come into view. And I think it's really important. That's why I'm focusing so much time on this. I actually, as I said, I put out a new documentary. I also put out a book. We have copies here, but all my work's able to download for free. It's called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, all about this whole thing and ideas for it. So that's where we're at now, right? The last thing I want to say on the technocracy coming in subtle forms, and I mean no offense to anybody here at Envision, because I love them and I want to be invited back, but I think it's important to kind of question this. The technocracy and this subtle erosion of privacy and things comes in very subtle forms. Like your favorite festival, putting an RFID chip on you. You better believe that billfold company, if they want to, knows where every single one of us are on this grounds. Now it's convenient. You don't want to deal with cash, right? I get it from a business standpoint. But this is a subtle way that it starts. This is the smart grid right here. This is cashless society where everything can be tracked and traced. And governments of the world would love that. That's why they, in some ways, are afraid of decentralized cryptocurrencies and alternative currencies, localized currencies, barter networks, because they can't track them, right? So just think about that. I've chosen to opt out this whole week and just eat in the commissary back there and not buy any of that lovely, awesome vegan ice cream. Damn it. But, you know, I know, but I don't want to participate in it. So I just want to make that point. And of course, this is all about aligning actions with principles and values and goals, right? So we just discussed that matrix. And now I want to tell you the ways to get out of that. Most of them are pretty simple. We've kind of illustrated them already, and most of them are kind of self-evident. It's like, okay, I don't like that. Try an alternative. To me, that's the only thing. I don't believe that violence is the answer, and I don't believe voting is the answer. I ran for mayor of Houston last year talking about a lot of these ideas, and I was well received in some circles and very unwelcome in other circles. And in a big city, at least as big as Houston, 3.5 million to 4 million people, I don't know that it is possible to fight locally anymore. That's what I've been encouraging people for years, but I did it, and I've worked it, and the corruption is from the neighborhood HOAs to the city council to the police chief. I mean, it's entrenched. It's very entrenched. So I don't think that true change will come through voting, or at least not through voting alone. I think the answer is the third path, right? Like Buddha said, there's the extreme path of pursuing material wealth, there's the extreme path of starving yourself and getting all emaciated to try to find enlightenment, and then there's the middle way. To me, that middle way is opting out. It's a philosophy that I've discovered over the past few years, and that I write a lot about. It's called counter-economics, or agorism, as in the agora, the open marketplace where all free people can come together and exchange ideas and exchange goods and build a better world. That's the answer. It's not going to be voting. It's not. What I like to say is neither the bullet nor the ballot. Instead, we build, right? So We're going to elaborate on that a little more. But I have to take a second out of my talk, if I can, just for a moment. I want you guys all to look at this beautiful woman standing right there behind my camera. That's my lovely partner, Miriam, and today's her birthday. Can we sing her happy birthday? And also, her art is in the art gallery. It's these beautiful wood-burn pieces. If anybody hasn't seen, they're giant right when you walk in. She's an amazing artist. All right, let's just do a quick happy birthday to Miriam. I'll take a moment out of my time because she's one of the most kind, compassionate, beautiful people that I am just so honored to share this journey with for the last 4 years. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Miriam. Happy birthday to you. All right, my time is probably short. We're going to keep pushing it a little bit. Am I good? Good. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so we're into the solutions, right? Is everybody still with me? I know I just presented a lot of information. Guys, I really appreciate your attention. You know, one of the things that we do have to call attention to is, look, this is a beautiful place, but even at the conscious, transformational, most sustainable, eco-friendly festival in the world, we're in the minority. Those of us who are here to learn, who are here to build solutions, and I think you guys are the ones who are going to go home and not just forget these conversations, but start integrating them into our lives. I see that and I feel that in you, but we're still the minority. And that's fine, you know, maybe real quick fix. We're addicted to things being quick and like I need it now. But I don't think actual lasting change is going to take that way. It takes each person having this deep, you know, that self-conversation as well as that self-assessment I talked about, looking and be like, holy crap, I'm totally out of line with my values. I want to be this better person that, you know, leaves the world in a better place. But in my daily life, I'm really contributing to harm and I'm feeding these systems that I know don't align with my values. But it starts by each of us having that realization and working to change it. And on the individual level, coming together as empowered, beautiful people and making this change happen, right? And that's why I do think that the ultimate answer to all these problems is to build community, one way or another. It's a concept that I call freedom cells. If for those of you writing things down, please write down freedomcells.org, as in CELLS.org, like the cells in your body. A freedom cell is basically a mutual aid group. I've heard people call them hubs, hives, whatever. I've been promoting them for the last 4 years, and people all over the world have taken the concept and used it in so many beautiful ways. This is your tribe, if you will. These are 7 to 9 people that you feel you can count on, and even if you don't have that number yet, you start with what you got. These are the people who also want to learn about permaculture. The people who also want to practice nonviolent communication, the people who want to develop themselves spiritually, who want to build urban farms, the people who you can count on, your core network of people. And the idea is that we share skills, we share knowledge, we share resources with each other so that each of us is empowered. Let's say you're the guy who knows how to do CPR. You teach everybody in our particular cell that so that we know that if any situation arises, we're not just dependent on him. If he's not there, he leaves, whatever, all of us are on that equal playing field, right? Maybe everybody wants to, learn some level of self-defense, so you go take the self-defense workshop together here at Envision, right? And now all of you gain a little bit of knowledge. You want to learn more about permaculture. I mean, it can be applied in so many different ways. There can be a cell that's dedicated to peaceful parenting, to homeschooling and unschooling for the parents that come together. But the goal is that we build this locally, and this network starts to form of these individual cells from Houston to Costa Rica to London. I mean, we have a website on freedomcells.org. We recently just relaunched it. There's a map on there. You can create an account and put what are your skills, what are your interests, where are you located, and you can use the map to search 5 miles, 10 miles, 50 miles, 100, and find other people who have joined near you. And the goal is not just to use this like another social network where you're just posting pictures of cats and looking at pictures of recipes and whatever else. Use that elsewhere. But this is to find people in the digital world to build real world communities. Now, some of us will choose to get land together. We'll choose to actually build intentional communities. Others might be in the city, and this could just be a support system. And again, I've put out dozens of videos on freedomcells.org. What is a freedom cell? Freedom cells applied to Standing Rock based on my experiences there and how it could be used for decentralized organizing. Freedom cells dealing with cops or immigration agents. I've seen beautiful examples when I went to Detroit a few years ago and was doing reporting on the lead in the water in Flint and just the water running out in Detroit and all those horrible things. I saw what they called groups of angels, and this is essentially, a freedom cell. When they knew that one of the trucks was coming to turn off some old lady's water who just couldn't afford it because they keep jacking the prices up, they would send out, alert, and maybe they were using an app or something. There's one called Cell 411, which is kind of a decentralized app to communicate with your cell. And they said, hey guys, we need to go over to Mrs. Smith's house. And everybody circled up and formed what they call groups of angels, linked arms, and blocked the trucks from coming and shutting them off. Now it might be a temporary fix because those trucks left and her water stayed on and everybody celebrated. But I do believe some situations will require that literal coming together of people. Or say for those who are worried about say your documented or undocumented status, and somebody comes in the night to try to take you away because you don't have the right paperwork on some piece of, on the map, then people come together and protect and defend against that. So I think it can be defense, it can be building community gardens, it can be parental issues, it can be maybe people who are more tech savvy and they want to build the apps that help us do the building of the community gardens and connecting to the digital world. So freedom cells, I believe, are the key to that. And the way I envision it is generationally, if we choose to be the ones with foresight and forward thinking right now, we start building, we make it so that we lay the foundation for the freedom cell network or whatever name we want to give it, and make it so that there can be a parallel reality to what this main system is. Because going back to the technocracy and what I said about the social credit score, the big part of the social credit score is not just that your score is going to go down low. In China, they've specifically said they want it to be antisocial folks, and as they define it, are literally not allowed to take a single step, where you lose the privilege to ride the bus, to go to work. Oh, I'm sorry, your score's too low, you can't get that loan. Oh, I'm sorry, your score's too low, you're not allowed to take that vacation. And probably the worst part of it, it's not just you. Your friends' scores will also, and this is what's happening in China, this is 100% already a reality, your scores will go down if you associate with people. So how long do you think it'll take your mainstream normie friends to be like, sorry man, I love you, but you won't stop protesting and you won't stop, building these gardens and not doing it in the assigned areas. You just won't be obedient. You won't stop, being a free person. So I got to stop hanging out with you. That's that social engineering, right? And the only way I think we survive through that in the next decade or so is to build communities of people who are going to opt out of those systems. And again, that could be the banking system. You choose credit unions. You choose alternative currencies. It could be the corporate media systems. Look up alternative media, independent media. There are factual, independent journalists that are still managing to survive, that are doing great work and telling you the truth you will never hear on the TV and never hear on Facebook and never hear through a Google search engine results. And there are people who are building alternative healthcare systems, there are people who are building better food production systems. The reality is all the solutions are already out there. We just need to connect it in a network that can, and what I envision and hope is that, say, as we're traveling, we could use a website or similar websites and apps like the Freedom Cell Network to find where the other like-minded communities are, to find where the good organic food is, to find where those resources are, to come learn, to share skills and to share knowledge and build the next stage. That's where I'm at, guys. I'm not at the point where I'm just going to keep coming to Envision every year and getting paid to come be here and enjoy this beautiful place and be around friends, but do nothing. I'm moving out of the U.S. this summer. We're moving to Mexico. The rest of the plan's a little secret, but we're building an intentional community, and this is the only way I see myself living in some level of contentment in the current reality. I don't think I can continue to exist in the matrix halfway in, halfway out. That's just not where I'm at. I think we'll each make different decisions, and this is what I talk about in my book. Some of us will choose to exit and build. Some of us will choose to hold down the fort, and I talk about strategies and idea on how we can collaborate together no matter which approach we take. But that's the answer. I think it's for us to build decentralized communities, intentional communities, this Freedom Cell Network, and to do it in as decentralized way as possible, with also not forgetting about that personal journey, because we talked a lot about the physical building, but I also want to live in a community where people who care about nonviolent communication, people who are regularly checking in with themselves, people who learn how to communicate with as adults and as beautiful people, and who are in touch with their inner child. I talked about the inner child on Friday, and the inner child is your key to your imagination, to your joy, that piece of you that lives, that 7-year-old little version of you that believes that anything is possible, as well as the key to your healing of your wounds that you might be still holding on from those times. So I want to live in a community of communities like this. I want to live Envision every fucking day. I mean, that's just me. I don't know about you guys, and I believe it's possible, and I know it's possible. And let me tell you this, the day I knew it was possible, I already knew it was possible, but when I saw it firsthand was the day I went to Punta Mona. Who's here been to Punta Mona? If you haven't been to Punta Mona, make time to go to Punta Mona. And there's many other beautiful examples, but the day I went there, and just the more connected I've gotten with Stephen Brooks and so many great people here, it was, I knew it, that, okay, there's no way to go back. I have to build this. And I feel inspired as somebody who uses my voice and uses my work to try to inspire other people to just, not to lead the way, because we're all going to lead ourselves wherever our paths go, but just to show as an example, because our brothers and sisters who aren't here in the festival and who aren't here, in general, they learn by example, right? Words only do so much. Social media posts only do so much. Instagram pictures only do so much. People lead by example, and they see through your actions, and people will be inspired through your actions. So I encourage each of you, again, you come back next year, whether you come back next year or not, 1 month from now, set a goal today. The end of Envision is here. What is your goal? What did you come here to get out of this? And what are you going to do after this? Because if we keep coming back and we just keep patting ourselves on the back because we're the conscious crowd and we're the ones that get it, let's forget all those other people. They don't know what's going on. Nothing's going to change. And if that's the case, let's just be real and say we're all here to party. Is anybody here to do more than just party? I mean, party and, right? All right, that's what I want to hear, all right? Because this is, all right, gosh, we're down to the last 15 minutes. I can't believe we're still going. You guys with me, though? I don't know how long I've been talking. All right, so I just got a couple other points and then I'll wrap up. I don't want to overdo my stay. But I talked a little bit about spiritual bypassing the other day. And again, this is the practice as we talk about the need for opting out of the physical systems and localizing. Localizing the most you can is in your own heart and your own mind. And as we pursue different methods and modalities of spiritual healing, which there's abundant versions here. There's hypnotherapy, there's different types of meditations and yogas and sound baths and things, and many of them are very beautiful and things that work for some of us, others don't work for other people. But whatever it is that comes to you that you feel guided by, make an extra special effort to really take the time to think about and ask yourself, are you going for this modality truly for healing? Are you ready to just let your guard down and to be vulnerable to get that healing that you need? Because that's what you really need to do. Or is it something that's more shallow, more superficial? Like I like to say, we just put on the festival costume for the weekend, right? We come out here and run around and do our thing. But when we go back home on Monday or Tuesday, we're just doing the same old thing. We're treating people. And I've seen this. Anybody ever been to Rainbow Gathering as well, or a similar thing? Like any type of event like this, I've seen it before where once you get off the festival grounds, right? We're in the cars, we're leaving, people are like already cutting each other off on the road, like, hey, fuck you, get out of my way. Like festival vibes already gone. You're just back there, right? Into the Matrix, into Babylon, whatever you want to say. But the reality is we have a choice every day, right? So my point is, let's make an effort to get past spiritual bypassing, to past this using spirituality as another way to avoid the actual deep healing. And I think that it's a slippery slope. It's a very fine line. You know better than anybody whether or not you are truly getting the healing you need, or if the latest meditation or the latest hypnotherapy or cryogenics or flotation or whatever it may be is really just a way to avoid what you really need to deal with. Because sometimes you don't need to spend a lot of money. You just need to go sit in your room in the dark and cry a lot, just things like that, and sometimes there's a lot of people talk about mushrooms. Yeah, sometimes you just need to take a mushroom trip and go sit in the room and be with that. Sometimes you just need to go outside and enjoy the trees and say, God damn, I love being alive. And even if you don't feel that way yet, say you don't, acknowledge that too. Acknowledge where you're at. Just be real where you're at, guys, because I do think that when we look at the physical world, and again, as somebody who's very glued into this for the last 10 years daily, as a journalist and as an activist and as a YouTuber and a documentary maker, I came to this festival. I started this trip. I've been on the road now for 3.5 weeks, traveling through Mexico and making my way here. I started this trip when I released my book and documentary just on this trip, feeling very hopeless. I ran into a lot of different friends and activists on the road, and we've had this conversation over and over, and I was just being real, like, I think I'm losing it. I'm losing my hope. I don't know, and I'll be real, it's because I see a lot of people who know what's going on or see the problems, and I see people who even realize, hey, there's solutions waiting for us, but there seems to be a gap in action. Knowing isn't enough. Sharing on social media isn't even enough, but even sometimes it seems people won't even do that. And there's still some of that inside, but I definitely want to say and let you guys know that being here with you and seeing everybody who gives a shit to be here right now, because you could be anywhere else right now. Hopefully you're not just here for the shade. The shade's nice. It does give me hope. I truly feel that this is why Creator put me on this path. This is why Creator put me through prison and put me through drug addiction and prison and surviving. And as I told the story the other day of just contemplating walking into traffic, like so many times when I was 14 or 15 years old, every day I'm thankful I'm alive, because I wouldn't be here with you guys to communicate, to learn, to grow, and to build a better world. And you guys give me hope. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Remember, stay in touch with your ancestors, stay in touch with your inner child, be skeptical of the technology that's all around us, be skeptical of authority. My documentary is the 5G Trojan Horse. You can find it online for free, just look it up. I've got copies of my books and shirts over there if anybody's interested or wants to come talk. But I'm going to end the way I always do, with my positive affirmation, and if you guys would join me, I very much would appreciate it. Again, this is an affirmation that came to me while I was going through prison, and it's something that kept me strong. And I want to make it clear that positive affirmations aren't just supposed to be some sort of mindless mantra that we repeat when we stub our toe, we're going crazy. I'm beautiful, I know it, I'm powerful. Sometimes they can help you get through a difficult moment, but really take the words in. I don't want you to just unconsciously repeat this. So if it doesn't vibe with you, feel free to remain silent. But if you hear the words and they resonate with you, then please let them go into your heart, let them go into your mind, and live them. And again, let's come back next year. Let's share with each other how much we've grown and what we've built as individuals and in this world, so we can change the world for future generations, guys. If you feel inclined, let's take a deep breath together. I am beautiful.
I am beautiful.
I am powerful.
I am powerful.
I am free.
I am free.
Let's do that one more time. Let's wake up everybody who just went to bed. I am beautiful.
I am beautiful.
I am powerful.
I am powerful.
I am free.
I am free.
Thank you, guys.